here we are today at Greenfield Shooting Ground, Sturry at Canterbury. It's a club dear to my heart. I use this club regularly on a Sunday to what I call practice, but it's a competition ground where they shoot a competition, normally 100 birds every Sunday. So I come here, compete in the 100 bird competition, which gives me an element of shooting under pressure. They put on good targets. They don't usually do stuff of big range. But one of the things I want to do with the club is to go to certain grounds and extract targets out of those grounds where perhaps regular club shooters are having problems. We go to the stand, have a look at the stand, see where the problems could occur, and then going forward from there I'll coach my way through that stand and how I would approach it and how probably a club shooter would approach it and where the mistakes could be made. So let's go inside, see Scott, the general manager, and see what happened last Sunday and see where the problems occurred. Film for the club today.
Right,
I didn't shoot the competition on Sunday, but I hear there was a tricky stand or two about.
Yes, there was, yes.
Which, stand 10?
Yeah. There was a quarter in standard and a quarter in batau upside down, which is a very unusual target for us to throw here, so it caught a lot of customers out.
Was Gary really pleased because it
yeah, he was actually. It was our registered shoot, so it caught a few people out.
Yeah, I'm sure. He every now and again he gets out of bed on the wrong side and you get one of those more difficult shoots, so it looks as though that was one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it did prove very tricky for our sort of run-of-the-mill customers. There was a few, people that shot well, but not to their averages, so that was a good shoot.
Excellent. Yeah, the first target we've got here is a standard target thrown off a Promatic trap on the curl. You can only see a part of a clay and it's thrown on an angle, so it climbs to start with and then dies fairly quickly. The second target is a batau target. Now the batau target is thrown from the same direction, but it's thrown upside down, so it gives a very irregular flight pattern. Where the target comes out, it dives very quickly and turns in mid-air. So it gives you only one possible place to kill the target in a correct fashion where the target really opens up. What we're going to do is we're going to analyse both targets individually and then we're going to shoot them as an on-report double. So as we discussed earlier on, we've come out to the stand now. This is the trap. As you can see, it's on a Promatic trap and the target, instead of being square, is on one of the Promatic tilts. It's a very clever idea. It throws an exact target every time. The beauty of the Promatic traps is they've got knife edges on the plates, so the target falls down, sits on the knife edge, and is thrown in an exact manner every time. If you look at the trap from here, you'll see the element of tilt on the target, and then if we throw the target, you'll see as it goes through the air, the element of the fact that the target is appearing to the shooter at 45 degrees rather than 90 degrees or horizontal. Okay, the second target is the batau target. This is a batau. Now then, the correct way of throwing a batau target, well, there's no correct way. You can throw them the correct way or upside down. Both fly in different trajectories. If you throw the target in the normal way, it throws a very long, straighter target with a loop at the end. If you throw the target upside down, it comes out looping right from the very start. Obviously you can see there's a dome side and a concave side. Okay, now he is throwing the target off this very old Promatic trap, as you can see, in an upside down manner. So the target will come out and it will arc immediately it comes out of the trap. It'll turn in mid-air and die. A very, very good target for a course setter to beat people with not too much distance. Okay, so here we are in the stand now, and what we've got is the two targets which are right to left, the standard to start with followed by the batau. Both targets climb to start with and then immediately start to drop off on the angle. Neither target shows a complete face. You must come through the target from behind, otherwise you won't get the line of it. And if your feet aren't correct, you will go over the top. Now the reason I say your feet aren't correct is because if your feet aren't correct, your body will not be able to keep up with your rotation as you come through the target, and automatically your shoulders would turn in the wrong way. Let me just give you a demonstration of how that will work. So I'm coming into the stand here, and if I stand and face the trap, and I'm going to shoot this target here, which is right to left, as I go through the target, for me to stay upright, this shoulder will have to drop. So as this shoulder drops, my gun goes up in the air. The target's trajectory comes out and starts to peak and drop away. So literally, as the target's coming out and starting to drop, my shoulder, because my feet are in the wrong position, is causing this shoulder to drop, and as it causes this shoulder to drop, the gun comes up in the air. Okay, so from the front view, empty gun, I'm stood facing the traps, and I go to rotate through the target, and that's what happens. That's an exaggerated version of what happens, but it's only got to come up in the air that much for you to be 6 foot offline on the target. Pull! Pull! A top class shooter will read the target and his feet will go into position straight away where he can force the gun down onto this knee by turning my feet so that I'm square to the target, rotate my left knee, come back in, my shoulders remain square, and I can push the gun to wherever I want down onto the target. The best thing about a good sportsman, a Roger Federer, a Rory McIlroy, they keep their head still and their shoulders square. Because if you don't, if you're off balance, if you're offline, the target and your gun are never going to be at one. So here we are, we're stood in the correct position now, which is I've opened myself up, I can rotate to my left knee. The trap is out here on the right. I'm going to come back below the line of the target so that I can come up to the target as opposed to starting here and making a double movement. I'm going to start below the line of the target. The target's going to come, I'm going to come up through the target looking at that bottom left hand edge. When I touch the bottom left hand edge, I'll pull the trigger and keep the gun going. Let's try one. Pull. Try that again. Pull. 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 Now, the whole object of me breaking that target in the manner that I've just broken it is my feet are correct, my shoulders are correct, the gun position is correct. I'm not making extra movements that I don't need to do. I'm just coming through the target from behind, touching that specific point on the clay, pulling the trigger and keeping the gun going. So it's effectively the economy of movement is breaking the target as easily as it's just broken there. Okay, we've broken down the first target, the standard. Now we're going to move on to the batau. Looking at the batau and seeing the trajectory of the target, obviously it comes out in a fairly straight line and drops off a very quick pace, as we spoke about earlier on. The way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to wind myself back. I'm going to keep a very similar stance to the first target. That way, as an on-report double, I'm not rushing and changing my feet in between targets. I'm going to keep a similar stance, but I'm going to let my knees and my body do the work, come back to the target, and I'm going to look to attack the target in a way where just as it starts to come off its peak and open out, I'm going to shoot it slightly earlier than perhaps, say, a club shooter would. And the reason I'm going to do this is a club shooter and a slightly less experienced shot will always try and shoot at the bigger picture. So they'll always try and shoot at the batau when it's opened out completely. Here, when the target's opened out completely, it's rapidly dropping. So not only have you got to work out the lead, you've also got to work out the line, and the fact that it's dropping on a curl is very difficult. For me, I would attack this target and shoot it in a slightly earlier manner than normal, for a normal batau when it's opened itself out, and shoot it when it's sort of half open, And the reason I would do this is because the line is fairly straight. Now by shooting this with the line fairly straight, I can actually approach this target as a crossing target rather than a batau type target. So although my picture is I'm only going to see half of the target, it's actually a more consistent method of shooting it because I'm shooting it on a straighter line than when it drops off. Okay, so what we're going to do here to shoot this batau is I'm going to rotate my left knee back in and drop my right knee out. And as the target comes, I'm going to transfer my weight through, pushing my right leg on and dropping my left knee back so that my shoulders stay square, but my body is creating the movement which allows me to move the gun freely. So that is the movement that I'm looking for. Pushing my left knee in, dropping my right knee out as I go through the target. Okay, so we've got the setup completely right. We're going to come in here, we're going to rotate our knees and we're going to come through the target. So obviously I'm going to be holding here at the edge of the cage. I'm going to be aggressive with this shot and I've got to look back as far as I possibly can to try and see that batau, which is edge on and difficult to see in the trees, away from the trap. I obviously get a slight, I can see the arm come round, I can see the trap, I know when the target's gone, so I can preempt that movement slightly, but I'm still looking specifically for the target. I'm going to let that target go, and because it's fast and I'm more aggressive, I've got a faster swing than I would have for the standard target. So my body is going to rotate through the target and I'm going to get that speed of swing from my body, not just my arms. My body's going to help me. As I come through the target, I'm going to shoot it as a flat crossing target just as it opens out. So as I'm coming through the target, because it's naturally dropping off, I'm going to be looking at the bottom left-hand corner, but probably in a position just underneath that. So instead of looking at the target, I'm going to be coming through almost underneath the target, looking at the target above my barrel. So I'm sort of looking at a channel 3 to 4 inches underneath the target so that my gun is always on the bottom side of it. That way, if the wind pushes it and pushes it down, I can go with the target. Let's just have a look at that. So I'm set up, my knees back, I'm going to hold here, I'm going to look back at the trap, I'm going to see the target off the arm and I'm going to come through it in an aggressive manner. Pull. Let's do that again. Pull. So I'm looking underneath the channel, looking at the bottom left-hand corner, and as I come to that bottom left-hand corner, I'm pulling the trigger and I'm killing the target before it has chance to open out and drop off. Okay, so we've shot the 2 targets as single targets. Now we're going to shoot them as an on-report double. In doing so, we're going to stand for the second target. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand to shoot the batau. The first target, obviously I'm going to have more rotation by standing to shoot the second target because I'm coming back further and I've put more body movement in it. So for the first target, to reduce my gun speed, I'm just going to hold my hand slightly further down the forend. That'll allow me to come through the target in a nice relaxed manner, bring my hand back and come through the batau absolutely as we've shot it as a single. By standing as we are for the batau, I can get away with the first target and I'm in comfortable position for the batau, which is the harder target. By doing so, it allows me to have a perfect swing, keeping my shoulders square for both targets. Now, if you get an on-report double and one target is slightly harder than the other one, if you haven't got time to move your feet, which you wouldn't have here, although it's not a very big movement, then I would suggest you set for the slightly harder target and counteract that with your first target, either a hand further down the forend or farther up the forend to slow the gun down or speed the gun up. What I'm going to do in showing you that, gun's empty, so I'm going to set from a batau target, come back here, I'm going to hold my hand just a little bit further down the forend, so from here I'm going to go to there. Just slows the gun up slightly for the slightly slower target. Once I've shot that, I'm going to come straight back to here for the batau, which will speed the gun up. So I'm going to hold here, there's for the first target, shoot the first target, keep my feet exactly the same, bring my hand back and shoot the batau. Pull. 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 For me, this stand is a straightforward stand where you shouldn't miss a target for a more experienced shot if you're stood correctly and you have the correct technique. So we're going to stand correctly, we're going to keep our shoulders square, come through the target looking at that bottom front edge. When we get to the bottom front edge, we squeeze the trigger, keep the gun going and finish the shot off. For the batau, we're going to look just underneath because we know it's going to drop off, it's upside down a little bit quicker, and you have an ideal scenario with a sound technique to put 10 on your card straight away.